I'm talking about compelled speech. There's a difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say. And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical PC authoritarians. Do you understand that? And I'm not a fan of that sort of person. And the reason I'm not a fan of that sort of person is because I've done my homework. I've read everything I can get my hands on in the development of authoritarian political systems, and I know the literature inside out and backwards. And I am not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest.
Hearing here is hate propaganda.
Why Dr. Peterson has been asked to stop abusing students.
Peterson controversy, which is really just a small drama, a tempest in a teapot, you know, he could just get over learning to program a few pronouns into his phone. By the way, I only have half a dozen or so that I actually use on an everyday basis, so it's not all that difficult.
Nick, can I be clear on something? You've accused him of abusing students by not using the pronouns they want to be addressed by.
That's how I see it, absolutely.
The presence of Nazis and white supremacists assaulting people at your protest, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I don't like Nazis. Well, you can look at the videos yourself.
Because people have been making complaints about your behavior.
And I don't think that Pete's solution to program my cell phone so that I can remember what names people need to be called is a reasonable solution at all. We're actually supposed to now use electronic devices to bolster our ability to speak freely in case we offend someone. Is it tantamount to violence?
Yes,
How about hate
absolutely.
speech? Is it tantamount to hate
Yes,
speech?
of course, it's hate speech.
Fine. I am not an advocate of violence. I'm speaking out the way I'm speaking out because I think this is a route to no violence. The assault so far came from the social justice warriors who are at this free speech rally. Almost 2 million people have watched those so far.
This is not accurate.
Well, you can look at the videos yourself. I have in fact been denounced today, and what I am saying has in fact been described as hate propaganda. So one thing I'd like to suggest to you, every single person in the audience, you're next. I've studied Nazism for a very long time. It's been 4 decades, and I understand it very well. And I can tell you that there's some awful people lurking in the corners, and they're ready to come out. I would say that the highest possible value is truth, and that one of the concomitants is that we need stringent protection for freedom of speech so that we can utter the truths that we see fit. And I think that that's a value that's much higher than kindness. I would say a legal doctrine is something like a virus. If you let it go into a living system, it propagates and it has effects, and the effects are a consequence of the philosophy that's embedded inside the law. And if you really want to know about this, you should read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. Because I don't believe that other people have the right to determine what language I use, especially when it's backed by punitive legislation. And when the words that are being required are the constructions, they're artificial constructions of people I regard as radical ideologues whose viewpoint I do not share.
So there's a reason I'm defending freedom of speech. And the reason for that is quite straightforward. The reason I'm defending freedom of speech is because that's how people get their opinions, settle their opinions in a civil society.
Yeah, well, kindness is the excuse that social justice warriors use when they want to exercise control over what other people think and say. So I'm going to read you something that a graduate student sent me from the University of Toronto the other day, and I can also tell you that I've received hundreds of letters like this. Today, I had a tutorial at the University of Toronto where I talked about Jordan Peterson and issues of personal identity, legally sanctioned identity categories, etc. I brought up a video of a tall white man in his 30s who asked students at a university how they'd react if he told them he identified as a woman, as black, as short, and as 5 years old. Spoiler alert. Students in the video resist some of the later categories a bit, but are mostly accepting. Still, students were not engaging in discussion. I asked them why. One said it was because she was worried to share her opinion for fear of being singled out or saying something offensive. I asked who else was not speaking for that reason. The whole class put their hands up. That was shocking to me. I encouraged them to speak despite their worries, and they gave me some good feedback on how to make it easier for them to do so. For instance, by working in pairs and being assigned an opinion so that they didn't have to be responsible for it or feel bad for defending it. No participation. Why? They weren't uninterested. They were afraid to speak their minds.